this is like the Olympics for people like me. This is what I live for. The Staley transcript. I know nobody really cares about the Staley transcript, but I do, because it's an inside look into exactly what happened between Jeffrey Epstein and his best friend at the time, Jess Staley, his banker friend who worked at JP Morgan, later on went to work at Barclays, and he testified a while ago. Testimony is probably the wrong thing. He was interviewed a while ago by the Oversight Committee, and we got the transcripts yesterday, and we've been poring over them. And Ann P. Mitchell is here to help me go through them. And this is why it's my favorite day of all time. Hi, Ann. How are you?
Hi, Zev. I am well. How are you? Long time no see.
I know. It's been, 24 hours?
I know. I missed you.
I know, but we see each other every other day almost these days, which is so good. Let me see. We're live everywhere that people need to know that we're live, and that's good. And we're going to play a little, supper hour theater, because you're a lawyer and I have something approximating an accent. So I'll play Jess Staley and you can play the lawyers, the endless lawyers that were involved in this. And what we've done is selected a number of excerpts out of a 200-page transcript. This is a very long, minutia-driven transcript, even though they didn't get to all the really important questions. They got to some really interesting things. And we'll just, we'll do this, and we'll go read through a few sections for everybody and analyze them as we go along. Plus, we'll take this as your questions. If you'd like to, please, on the chat or anywhere you're communicating with us, preferably on the Substack chat, because that's where we look the most, just write your questions and we'll answer whatever we have. And also, this will be it's free right now if you're watching, but it's the only time free viewers will be able to see this, because afterwards it'll be a pay for view event for paid viewers only. So if you're watching now, you're getting it free. That's just nice. Good for you. All right, it's time to get into the Staley transcript. Anything you want to say, Anne, before we begin here? Because it is quite a lengthy ordeal. I'm sure we'll have lots of comments along the way, but I'm interested in what your thoughts are overall.
I just, I think that there, you mentioned that you don't think, or maybe people aren't so interested in this, but you are, but they really need to be, because these are the things where you will find the things that people elsewhere who have more light shining on them, they're not going to say. But when you take these transcripts and piece them together with what the other people have said, that's where you get to find impeachment testimony, right? Like you and I just talked about, and I think we're going to talk about, the discrepancy between what Jamie Dimon said in his testimony and what Jess Staley just said in his testimony. And there's like a big discrepancy, and one of them's lying.
Yeah, and everyone has to position themselves inside JP Morgan, America's biggest bank, who throughout the 2000s was doing all sorts of shady business with giving loans to people that they shouldn't be giving loans to, along with the whole subprime market that was, extended from some of these big Wall Street banks. Jess Staley was in the middle of all of that. He was the number two to Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon is still today one of the most powerful people in America, still running the bank that, counted Jeffrey Epstein as a client, also counted Donald Trump as a client, and also, counted many of the women that were trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein, and including two Jess Staley through those years. So it's a purview into that world where they allowed this guy access to their accounting world, to their banking world, at a time when no one should have allowed him to do that, because he was an adjudicated, convicted child trafficker. And so for him to then, or for them, this is just a really revealing world that Jess Staley covered this up. And it was because of their friendship, because Jess Staley and Jeffrey Epstein were such close friends, that he stayed on at the bank, despite many warnings from many people saying we shouldn't have him. He's not an honorable client. We shouldn't have this guy on board. All the systems went off inside the bank, but Jeffrey Epstein stayed a client throughout all those years, which is quite an achievement, actually, from Epstein's perspective. But an interesting thing, a lapse in the judgment of Jamie Dimon and Jess Staley, maybe even an intentional criminal act I would
Yeah, and
argue.
we're going to see several of those lapses here. And first of all, I just have to say, you guys, Zev worked up until the last minute to put this together, and to put these slides together for us. And I want to just give him, you guys give him some applause, because he never sleeps, I think. I mean, so
I
just
don't
Zev,
sleep.
thank you for being so on top of everything, and for my followers, who are here. If you're not following Zev, please do, because he is just the real deal, and you're missing out on a lot if you're not following him.
And I'll say the same for you. Ann P. Mitchell has a remarkable audience, and if you don't, and a remarkable Substack, if you're not following her, you're missing out on something, because every time there's a big legal document that comes out, she'll give you the source material if you're a paid subscriber, and you should become a paid subscriber, but she'll also give you an incredible first-hand analysis on everything, and very quickly so, which is such an important thing. It's not just you have to wait and wait to read what it's about. She dives into things very quickly and gives you a very accurate analysis. Yesterday, she was on the Five Stack with us, and we were just talking about the USPS rule thing that's coming down. And you were right. You were right so far. Everything's played out the way you said it was going to play out, which is why you're a brilliant advocate and attorney, and why it'll be very helpful as we go through this. So we'll take your questions as we go through this. These are just various exchanges, 7 of them, that we've chosen from the interview. It was not under oath. It was just an interview. This is the first one, the admission block. And I guess you'll play the attorney, and I'll do my best, Jess Staley here, only on account of the British accent.
I just want to point out that actually testimony before a House committee is under oath, which is why we can use this to impeach either him or Jamie Dimon.
I thought it was just an interview. I thought it wasn't. I think they claimed it was. He didn't have to. I think it's a distinction that they've made, that it's an interview with the transcript that's released, but not under oath. But I might be wrong.
I could be wrong. I mean, typically
you're obviously
it is under
more
oath.
Okay.
It is possible that they made an arrangement for him to just talk to them and have it not be an official hearing. I thought it was a regular hearing, but I don't know. So maybe if someone in the audience knows or can check that for us, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And in the meantime, take it away.
Mr. Staley, how did you meet Tom Pritzker?
I think I just met Tom Pritzker. He's a client of the bank.
Do you recall? Okay, hang on.
Would you recall what you met with him about?
Yeah, I see it. I just didn't, it didn't parse. Okay. Do you recall what you met with him about with Mr. Epstein?
Again, I'm not sure I met with Mr. Epstein. My recollection is I met with Tom Pritzker at their headquarters.
Did you work with Mr. Epstein on any deal for Mr. Pritzker?
I don't think so, no.
Well, the Wall Street Journal has reported in March of 2026 that you divulged confidential information to Mr. Epstein regarding financial dealings that J.P. Morgan Chase was working on. What information did you divulge?
What year?
This was reported in 2026, but the deal that they found was in 2008.
Do you know which deal they're talking about?
A deal for the Pritzker family.
I don't. No, I don't recall what the deal was.
Would it be accurate to say that you divulged bank communications with the Federal Reserve on how to stabilize the financial system?
Yes.
Did you divulge any other market-moving information to Mr. Epstein?
Ask the question again. Sorry.
Did you divulge any other market-moving information to Mr. Epstein?
I don't think so, no.
Would it be accurate to say you also divulged that J.P. Morgan was inundated by $44 billion in new assets within 2 weeks?
That's possible, yes.
So is there any other information that you divulged to Mr. Epstein?
It was a long time ago you're talking, so I apologize. I can't answer it.
I would still like an answer to the question, though. Is there any other information that you divulged?
That I recall? No.
Did you discuss J.P. Morgan's salaries with Mr. Epstein?
I discussed my salary with Mr. Epstein, yes.
Did you understand at the time that sharing this information was in violation of your fiduciary duties to the bank?
No.
Why did you share this information with Mr. Epstein?
To get his thoughts and ideas about it.
Did Mr. Epstein benefit from any of the information you divulged?
No, that I'm aware of, no. I discussed my salary with Mr. Epstein, yes. That's the end of the first portion. Now, what's important here is the fact that there was information shared around the 2008 crash. Important, detailed, insider, confidential information shared between Jess Staley and Jeffrey Epstein, which indicates the type of relationship they had, the closeness of the relationship. And because many of us suspect, as I've detailed in the Greatest Heist book too, that Jeffrey Epstein had a lot to do with the collapse of the market in 2008. That's why all of this stuff is very critical. But it also puts Jeffrey Epstein inside the leadership group of the JP Morgan financial empire, JP Morgan Chase. And that's a very significant place for someone to be, someone who has at least some espionage contacts, some espionage connections with both the FSB and Israeli military intelligence, and someone you wouldn't normally, especially because he was a convicted sex trafficker, normally include in your big financial decisions. But Jess Staley did that, and that's significant.
Let's not forget that, you and I disclosed that 3-hour secret meeting between Epstein and Barack and Summers, which is another example of how these people, these highly placed, highly influential people, were sharing information with each other and, basically manipulating economies and countries. And also, I just want to say, Ellie, thank you so much. So Ellie says that she has determined that this was not under oath, so I apologize. It's a bit unusual. And I suspect that his attorneys finagled that specifically so that he couldn't, be impeached.
A lot of them have been like this lately because, there was so much made of the first ones which were under oath. And it's unfortunate, Howard Lutnick sort of broke the dam on that. And since then, everybody has been allowed to have an interview versus a full-on under oath testimony, which I think does weaken the testimony. I mean, for sure, it doesn't make you feel like it's very accurate. And as you read this, as I read this, I thought it was lying through a lot of this.
But, here's the thing that maybe they're not thinking about, unless they have cut a deal of which, I'm unaware, that, this interview, an interview of this style, can be the basis for a subpoena under which they would have to actually testify under oath. Of course, it would be useless because they would just, plead the fifth. But I mean, so there's still ways to get them under oath.
Ellie's also saying that except Leon Black, who's now being subpoenaed. Interesting, Leon Black is being subpoenaed, I think, on the September the 3rd is the deadline. And it is interesting as well today that Bank of America finalized its deal with the Epstein survivors, a big deal, $72 million, I think, just in time for Leon Black to enter that subpoena and return whatever information he's willing to do. Because, of course, one of the banks that Epstein and Leon Black used to launder some of their money, allegedly, through the art world, was, I gotta say it, was the Bank of America, who've never really been called to account, and now they have. So interesting timing there for the Bank of America thing.
Well, and I think that this is more, another example, as you and I have discussed, of, the cracks that are forming and, the parties starting to fold or capitulate, or at least starting to, talk about folding or capitulating, because it's happening all around them and they want to cut a deal before they get indicted.
Yeah. I should say one more thing about the discussing your salary with Jeffrey Epstein. When you read the actual conversations that they had between Jeffrey Epstein and Jess Staley on his mail, it wasn't just say, this is how much I earn. It was a coaching document about how to approach Jamie Dimon, with what numbers to approach him, with what money to ask for. It was a very intimate, close conversation, almost like you would have with your business manager or your coach, or maybe if you were a asset to somebody, your handler. It's that kind of conversation. And so it's unusual that happened, and it's unusual that he's confirming it here, because you wouldn't normally have that kind of conversation with anybody, really, unless they were very, very close to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, going back, I hate to keep bringing it up, but it's just such a stellar example of it. That this is the reason that we know that Epstein was at minimum an asset to, for example, Israel, because otherwise, again, that 3-hour conversation, Barack would not be saying the things he was saying to him and Summers if he wasn't a trusted asset.
And
So, I mean,
yeah, and Jess Staley is one of those people, like Ahud Barak, like Summers. Staley was in the inside loop with Jeffrey Epstein and involved in all these critical things that happened. Maybe some would argue Bill Clinton too. Donald Trump would be the other name that comes up there. All right, so now this is the $44 billion email, and you can't read it very well, but I can't either. But this is the point where this is from the actual Epstein Files Transparency Act releases, where he talks about how they've had this huge boon in business at the private bank at JP Morgan. $44 billion has come in at this time, and it's September 2008 after the crash. And so a lot is booming for JP Morgan, and this is the conversation they have.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you happen to know, why are they referring in these emails to, quote, the private bank instead of JP Morgan Chase?
JP Morgan Private Bank is the bank that Jess Staley, or the division of JP Morgan that Jess Staley operated. It was for very, very high-end clients, like Jeffrey Epstein, and dealt with all sorts of unusual sort of arrangements for very high-end clients. It's not the bank that you and I sidle into and say, hey, handle my finances. It's not that kind of branch. It's a very fancy branch. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. You might be.
Oh, God, no.
I know you might be, but I'm not. I just go to the regular one. So,
me too.
So, do you want to pick it up here? This is the conversation around the same Bates number. I guess we could miss this first one because it's this email. There you go.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, back in Inquisitor mode. I would like to introduce, Your Honor, as Minority Exhibit Z, an email between you and Mr. Epstein dated September 26, 2008. I said, Your Honor, because that's what you would do first, actually. The Bates number is EFTA 013000035. Okay. In this email, you write, quote, I'm spending a lot of time with Treasury. The private bank has brought in $44 billion in the last 2 weeks. Unreal. Why did you tell Mr. Epstein that you were spending a lot of time with Treasury?
This was during the financial crisis of 2008. Obviously, a lot was going on financially, globally, and around the world. I was working with the US Treasury in my capacity at JP Morgan. And again, I would use Epstein to get his advice and thoughts on issues like this that I was facing.
Would you agree the information about how much money JP Morgan's private bank brought in over the course of 2 weeks is confidential?
I think I could share it with someone that I was seeking advice from.
Even if that person was not retained by JP Morgan in any capacity?
Again, I think I was using him as a source of advice and views on the markets, but not. This was a very stressful time. So I was not paying him, but I was using him as an advisor at the time.
In the next paragraph, you write, quote, also, do you know Sheldon Adelson? I'm throwing him out of the bank on Monday. You spelled it Throughining. Did you mean Throwing? You moron.
We exited Sheldon Adelson as a client.
You're not asking Mr. Epstein for advice here, though? You're just sharing information?
No, I'm asking whether he knows Sheldon Adelson, and I don't know whether there were follow-up questions or not.
So your testimony here is not that you are just sharing an extremely confidential piece of information with Mr. Epstein, but even though you don't ask him for any advice or counsel.
I asked him whether he knew Sheldon Adelson.
And you read that as looking for Mr. Epstein's advice or counsel on a decision that you've already made?
Potentially.
Why would you need his advice or counsel on a decision you had already made?
I don't need it, but I might want it.
On a decision you had already made?
Yeah.
Would you agree that information about a client's status at a bank is confidential?
Yeah, confidential, but I believe as a senior officer of the bank, I've got the right to use confidential information where I think it's appropriate. Well, and is it appropriate?
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not.
So what they're doing here is that line of questioning is very good, isn't it? I mean, they sort of really get at him as to what he views as confidential and classified and what's important or not. And they cornered him a little bit, didn't they?
Yes, yes, and this is exactly the sort of thing. Now, I, as the lawyer, I call it testimony, and I think that's important because even though he may not be under oath, or he isn't under oath, this is the kind of thing that can be called out to subpoena him to come in and testify about it under oath because it is, it's at odds with other standards of practice, or depending on what he's saying with other testimony. So, yeah.
I mean, the truth is, Jeffrey Epstein had a very, very close interaction with Jess Staley about lots of things related to the business of J.P. Morgan, and that's just a fact as you go through these. And I don't even know why he'll try and run away from it, but he's not just an advisor; he makes money off the deals, as we find out later through Highbridge Capital. He stayed on as a bank's client through many years, even though they suspected him of human trafficking, amongst other things. And of course, he was there advising both the Treasury and JP Morgan what to do during the 2008 crisis while he was in jail. And we'll get to that in just a minute. But, Jess Staley asks for him to have a holiday from prison, a weekend break from prison, to come and advise him on the 2008 crisis, which is not something you'd normally expect to do out of a sex trafficker, convicted human being. But there you go. This next one is the Stockade. I'm not sure what this is. I can't read these things. I'm half blind. But I think what we're looking at here, let me just see if I can just quickly zoom in here. So Staley writes to Epstein, I'm dealing with the feds on an idea to solve things. I need a smart friend to help me think through the stuff. Can I get you out for the weekend? To help me.
Can Jeffrey
Are they listening? Meaning the guards, I think. I mean, really, it's kind of crazy to think that this is a thing that's happening in the real world. How do I get back to us now?
Well, you have to remember that he was on work release during a lot of that time, and he was actually going to that fake office. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he might be allowed to have a pass.
Yeah, I think he did get the pass, if I'm not mistaken. So that's good. I just don't know how to get back to us, but I guess I'll just do this. I'll go like this, and then I will do this. There we go.
You ready?
So are they listening? He's referring as well to the guards. He's wondering if the guards are listening to what the words are that he's saying there. But he's asking this incredible thing. He's having this conversation with Treasury in the midst of the biggest financial crisis in American history. He is in jail. Jeffrey Epstein is in jail in isolation, if I'm not mistaken. And he talks about this with Steve Bannon at a later point, and talks about this weird world that he's in. He's in jail and wearing brown, whatever you do in prison, pajamas, whatever they are. And yet he's having calls with the Treasury on the one hand, and his friend who's the head of private banking at JP Morgan about the financial crisis. And it's bizarre.
Let's not forget, he also has a sex bed in the back of his SUV that he uses to commute between the jail and his fake office every day.
Really? Yes, he does have that.
Yes.
By the way, his fake office was due so he can get a lighter sentence by cheating on a prosecution that he was assisting with. Hey, what a guy. So here we go. Go ahead.
All right. I would like to introduce as Minority Exhibit AA an email chain between you and Mr. Epstein dated October 8th, 2008. In the first email of the chain, you write, quote, I just gave an idea to the Fed and Jamie that might help the financial markets in a big way. Both thought it brilliant. You're referring to the Federal Reserve here, correct?
Yes, I am.
Why did you share information about your conversations with the Federal Reserve and JP Morgan's CEO with Mr. Epstein?
Again, this was a very, very stressful time in the market. I was using Epstein's knowledge and judgment. And so I was sharing information with him as we were trying to navigate these very difficult times.
And I'm sure that the attorney or the questioner at that time was thinking to themselves, like the judgment of a guy who had sex with underage girls. That judgment.
Then she asks it, I think, later on in this exchange. It's exactly what she is thinking.
Mr. Epstein responds with some thoughts about financial markets. And then you reply, quote, I am dealing with the Fed on an idea to solve things. I need a smart friend to help me think through this stuff because I'm a moron. Can I get you out for a weekend to help me? Are they listening? Was this the same brilliant idea that you referred to earlier?
I believe it was the same idea, and I referred to earlier.
Mr. Epstein was incarcerated at this point, correct?
Yes.
When you wrote, quote, get you out for a weekend, you meant out of the Palm Beach County stockade, correct?
Yes.
And when you wrote, quote, are they listening? You were asking whether Mr. Epstein's emails were being monitored, correct?
It seems that way, yes.
Did it strike you as problematic to be asking a convicted sex offender if you could get him out for a weekend so that you could share an idea you gave to the Federal Reserve and JP Morgan's CEO?
Again, Epstein had a very interesting insights into the financial markets. It was a very difficult time in those markets, and I thought that I could benefit from getting his thoughts with respect to what I was thinking of doing with the Fed. This is also you, I think. So it's
okay. Ms. Ryan continues. Who is Ms. Ryan?
I don't know who's Miss Ryan. Where's you seen that?
Well, anyway, Ms. Ryan continues, quote.
Oh, I'm not seeing that.
And when you wrote, quote, okay. Page 37.
Okay, you're ahead of me. You're into the next one. So we're going to stop there. We're going to stop quickly at the stockade question here. So are they listening? Are they being monitored? Yes, seems so that way. That's the repeat answer of that question. That's exactly what we just discussed. There's not much more to say there. He was just saying, asking a convicted child trafficker if he was come help him solve the world's biggest financial crisis and if he could get him out of jail for the weekend. Because, this is... He's a liar, obviously. That's how he got into this position where he had this charge, and he got a really whittled down charge. As we all know, it was a sweetheart deal that he got to plead to a very, very minor charge. The extent of his human trafficking was far, far more serious, and Jess Staley knew that because he partook in some of that trafficking. So it makes it even more questionable that even though, yes, this was a minor charge, but in reality, he knew exactly who he was dealing with here, someone who would, traffic teenagers to important people around the world in order to buy their secrecy. But no problem there for Jess Staley. Just went right ahead. Asked him if he can come hang out for the weekend.
Again, can Jeffrey come out to play?
Yeah, it's so weird. So I think Mrs. Ryan here in this case is...
I'm looking it up right now. It's someone it's clearly a communication between bank employees, and they're talking about whether they should retain Epstein as a client.
Yes, which is interesting, of course, because they shouldn't, but here we go.
Let's see, hang on one second. I think I can... Okay, well, I guess she's definitely a bank employee, but I can't quickly get my finger on exactly who she is. So, all right. So in an email chain between bank employees discussing whether you should retain Epstein as a client, Ms. Ryan continues, quote, Catherine made sure we knew that no one on today's call was in favor of having retained him as a client. Seems it is all due to Jess's personal relationship. Note, he has about $212 million in the bank. Would you agree at this point, JP Morgan's retention of Mr. Epstein as a client was due to your personal relationship with him?
No, I would not.
What was it due to?
I think the bank had full authority to close his accounts and close his business. It was not up to me to make a decision. I was not involved in the decision. I wasn't in the rapid response team. I wasn't involved in any of this process. Sorry.
Keep going.
Oh, I knew Epstein, but I think the bank and the people from Catherine Keating on down had the authority to close their accounts and chose not to. But I think they significantly restricted his activities with the bank.
You're mentioned throughout this email, though, multiple times.
Again,
by multiple people. Clearly, you are central to this entire decision.
No.
Okay, Mr. Sullivan is clearly Staley's attorney, right? Saying, yeah, okay. And then you say, no. How can you say you were not involved in it? And if you weren't involved in it, why are so many people talking about how they have to talk to you about Mr. Epstein?
In the meetings discussing Epstein's accounts, was I in the meetings with all those people listed?
Were you?
No.
In the last full paragraph of the email, Ms. Ryan says, quote, "The one new concerning thing is the one article about the DOJ investigation is saying they brought underage girls to the U.S. via a modeling agency, M2, that is owned by a guy named Brunel. Turns out the bank said today wait a minute.
Yeah, I think it's correct.
Turns out the bank said today we extended Epstein a loan in relation to this modeling agency. We believe she means MC2. Would you agree that at this point in early 2011, JP Morgan had reason to believe that the bank had directly funded Mr. Epstein's sex trafficking operation?
Again, I was not part of this. I was not part of this area of the bank any longer. So to ask me to tell you what the bank was thinking, it's more important that you ask the bank.
At the bottom of the email, Ms. Ryan says, quote, "Bottom line, we need W to meet with Jess to explain HT, and then Jess could decide the next steps. We understand this to mean that Mr. Langford needs to meet with you and explain human trafficking, and then you can decide the next steps. As you have pointed out multiple times, you were the CEO of the investment banking division at this time, correct?"
Yeah, not the private bank.
So you did not have authority over asset management or the private bank, correct?
That's correct.
So then why did JP Morgan's director of anti-money laundering, or anyone else for that matter, need to talk to you about Mr. Epstein?
I think you should ask him.
Why would all of these people from different divisions at JP Morgan repeatedly talk about how they need to go to you to talk about Mr. Epstein, to explain human trafficking, if you do not have a significant role in the decision to keep Mr. Epstein as a client?
And I think you need to ask them that I did not have a significant role in the decision to keep Epstein as a client. Well, that's a really enlightening exchange.
It really is.
And I've read many of these emails back and forth in The Greatest Heist, and some of them are included there. There's no doubt that Jess Staley, even though he wasn't the head of the private bank at this time, had enormous say over whether Jeffrey Epstein would stick around. And that's because Jess Staley and Jamie Dimon and Jeffrey Epstein all went back to Ohio and Wexner. That's how long they knew each other. From the early 1980s, they had been connected to each other through Wexner, who, as you know, became Epstein's #1 client. So a long-term friendship, a very, very long-term friendship that was also important when he was running the private bank and then the investment bank. But clearly, they felt very highly of him. And he was also very close to Jamie Dimon, and that's another reason he would have been involved. Earlier on, by the way, you mentioned this Fed idea when he said he discussed it with Jamie. It's interesting that Jamie Dimon, until recently, says that he only knew about Jeffrey Epstein much later on. in
2019.
yeah, 2019, which is not the case at all. Clearly, they knew each other before. But in this little exchange we read earlier, Jess Staley's talking to Jamie about Epstein, not necessarily about the Epstein directly, about the Fed involvement, but he's also asking Epstein to be involved in that decision. So it's another indicator that Jamie would have been aware of all these things.
Which again is, now this can be the basis to subpoena Jamie Dimon and basically impeach him under oath. That would look like, well, Jess Staley says that you were in contact about Epstein in 2008. You said you didn't even know about Epstein until 2019. So which is it? Is Jess lying or are you lying? And that.
There's volumes of evidence, and I've written about this, that really Jamie Dimon is at the core, is the center of a cover-up, and he's the reason so much of this has landed up going to, it was reported so late to the Treasury Department. All those suspicious activity reports came so late because they knew internally that they were dealing with something that was very suspicious, and it all went up to Jamie Dimon, including the fact that Jamie Dimon would have known that they were securing the amount of money that was in liquid funding, which is a vehicle, an offshore vehicle that Jeffrey Epstein ran, and where he and his network of friends were able to keep a lot of money that never got pummeled by the markets in 2008. Instead, it was paid off in full, unlike almost every other offshore investment. This was the one piece of investment run by Jeffrey Epstein that was paid off in full, meaning all its investors were made whole, even though the rest of the market was crashing. Jamie Dimon has a lot to answer for, and he should be subpoenaed. And he should be subpoenaed in front of the Oversight Committee. And it would be really interesting if it all ended up being post-November when the Democrats will be in charge of that committee, because that'll mean different things. Very different things.
It might be even more interesting if it all was revealed like right before November 11th.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Donald Trump is going to be subpoenaed to appear if the Democrats are in charge of the same committee after November.
Gosh, what was I going to say? I had something I was going to say, and now I just right out of my head. So
it's okay.
Oh no, I know what it was. I have to imagine that the board of JP Morgan has already drafted an exit package for Dimon and has it waiting in the wings just in case.
Jamie Dimon must be on his way out just because there's too much evidence on this. He's hung on for a very long time, and he's worth a fortune of money. He gets paid so much money. This is about the Slovak model. So Jeffrey Epstein had a habit of opening up bank accounts on behalf of his models. And I use the term models loosely, but there were a lot of models that came to work for him from overseas. He would take their passports and oftentimes opened up bank accounts at his favorite bank, JP Morgan. So this is this exchange.
I would like to introduce, as Minority Exhibit N, a due diligence report for a checking account that Mr. Epstein asked JP Morgan to set up for an unknown woman in 2004. The due diligence report does not list a date of birth for this woman, and it notes no government documentation has been provided. The report also states that the Social Security given could not be confirmed as belonging to the woman. The report acknowledges that no one at JP Morgan actually met with this woman and that all of the information about her was provided by one of Epstein's advisors, a man named Eric Gainey. Finally, the report notes that the woman is in the U.S. for modeling work and states, quote, Jeffrey Epstein knows the model personally. Epstein is a long-standing client of JPMPB, which stands for JP Morgan Private Bank. The report also states, quote, Jeffrey Epstein often provides support to emerging models. In this case, the redacted name, has arrived from the Slovak Republic, and Epstein has asked us to the favor, mark that, favor of opening a checking account for her. Would you agree that there are a number of indicators of sex trafficking here?
I think the bank should not be opening an account without doing proper due diligence.
What would proper due diligence have looked like here?
Knowing what the client is, knowing who the client is, KYC, AML, anti-money laundering, knowing where the client's origination of wealth comes from, all sorts of issues. But if you have an invalid social security number, that would be a red flag, etc.
Would you agree? Would you agree that opening this account, strike that. Did you ever see this due diligence report? And I want to point out for the audience that when an attorney says strike that, all that happens is the court reporter types in the words strike that.
Interesting. They don't actually strike it.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Were its contents communicated to you?
No.
Would you agree that opening this account without the information we discussed was a significant failure on JP Morgan's part?
Seems non-compliant, yes.
That same year, 2004, JP Morgan noted $840,000 in cash transactions in Mr. Epstein's JP Morgan account. The next year, 2005, JP Morgan identified over 900,000 in cash transactions from Mr. Epstein's personal JP Morgan account. Earlier today, you said that significant cash withdrawals are a red light. You have also previously testified in the class action against JP Morgan that significant cash withdrawals are, and I quote, a smoking gun. Would you agree that JP Morgan sat on a red light or a smoking gun for 9 years?
Seems like it. It seems non-compliant, yeah. Which, of course, they did. I mean, there was years and years of opportunity for JP Morgan to file the suspicious activity reports. They waited until after his death, meaning they knew there was a lot of wrongdoing going on in his account. You know, billions of dollars moving in and out, mainly to Russian accounts, we should add, and to, you know, and these odd accounts, these private accounts for these women that came from Eastern European countries. You know, they didn't do anything until after his death, which is an indicator of culpability, you'd think, but who knows? Cutler's verdict. So I don't know what this one's about. This is, why don't we just read it and we'll find out.
All right.
Steve Cutler, that's right.
Now I would like to introduce as Minority Exhibit W an email exchange between you and Mr. Epstein dated March 20th, 2011. The Bates number is EFTA 009-06898. In the first email, Mr. Epstein writes, quote, I'm working on getting Steve Cutler the comfort he needs. To which you respond, quote, agree? Was Mr. Cutler concerned about something related to Epstein?
I think Steve Cutler had the ultimate decision as to whether we keep Epstein as a client. Also, I think around this time, Epstein had hired a legal team, and I think that legal team was being set up to meet with Steve Cutler.
Is that what Mr. Epstein was doing to get Mr. Cutler the, quote, comfort he needs?
I think so.
I would like to introduce as Minority Exhibit X an email chain with you, Mr. Cutler, Miss Erdos, James Condren, and Nina Schenker, dated July 19th, 2011, a few months after Mr. Epstein told you that he was working to get Mr. Cutler the comfort he needed. In the most recent email, so at the top of the page, Mr. Cutler writes of Mr. Epstein, quote, this is not an honorable person in any way. He should not be a client. So you have said multiple times today that Mr. Cutler had the authority to terminate a client relationship, correct?
Yes.
If Mr. Cutler had that authority, why didn't he use it?
I don't know.
Did you exert influence over Mr. Cutler to keep Mr. Epstein as a client?
No.
You left JP Morgan in early 2013, correct?
Yes, correct.
And then JP Morgan terminated its relationship with Mr. Epstein in the summer and fall of that year, correct?
Yes.
Why do you think JP Morgan only removed Mr. Epstein as a client once you left the bank?
I don't know.
You don't think those two things are connected?
No. That's pretty self-explanatory there. I do like that line. This is not an honorable person in any way. He should not be a client. And this was repeated throughout many, many review meetings that they had about Jeffrey Epstein. And always Jess Staley somehow protected him until he left the bank. This is the final of the excerpts we've chosen, but there's a couple more things we'll talk about afterwards. But this is regarding I'm not sure what this one is.
This is about him discussing his salary with Epstein.
Right.
And really the fact that that was confidential information. So again, this is Staley, who is basically violating the rules of bank confidentiality to share information with Epstein. There is overwhelming evidence that this is false, what you just said. You asked Mr. Epstein for advice on your salary. You shared confidential information about how your business was doing and what deals you were working on. You told Mr. Epstein about meetings you had with government officials and meetings that others had with government officials. And you gave Mr. Epstein multiple updates on the hiring process at Barclays. Why would you lie about this to the Bowdoin College trustees?
Can you repeat what I said to the Bowdoin College trustees?
Quote, at no time after his conviction in 2008 did I allow J.E. any connection with any aspects of my professional life. Indeed, I have never had any professional relationship with Jeffrey Epstein except for his relationship with J.P. Morgan's private bank, which began long before I ever met him.
And I think that was referring to him, to like him being a client, him advising on a transaction like Highbridge. I don't believe that. I think it was actually doing business with him as opposed to using him to give me counsel with respect to my career. I think those are separate things.
I don't follow that distinction. You say you didn't allow him any connection with any aspect of your professional life after his conviction. When he is in jail, you email him asking what your salary should be. That very much seems like after his conviction, you are allowing him a connection to an aspect of your professional life.
I think it was talking about connections of actually business being conducted in my professional life, not about me.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Connections about business?
So the selling of American Century, or thinking of buying Dimensional, or having him involved in the acquisition of Highbridge as separate from, I'm thinking of going to Barclays, what do you think? One is sort of advice about my professional life. The other is about transactions and business.
I am still not following you because you did both. You asked him for advice on your professional life and you shared.
Right. I think after his conviction, I wouldn't know. If I was doing a transaction, I wouldn't bring him to get involved in that transaction. That's different than my personal life or professional life.
Right. But after his conviction, you did both. You shared information about deals you were working on.
Very little.
We have talked about that, though. You shared information with him about deals you were working on. You told him about meetings you were having with government officials.
And that's different.
Sure. And then in the other category, you asked him for advice about what you should say to Jamie Dimon in a salary negotiation.
Right again. But that's different than bringing to him actual business transactions like American Century or Dimensional or Highbridge.
So you think that the natural reading of this statement that you made to the Bowdoin College trustees is that you were saying that you didn't do some sort of formal business with him?
Yes.
When you say at no time after his conviction in 2008 did I allow J.E. any connection with any aspect of my professional life?
That would have been public and involved in a transaction. That's correct. Whereas before he was paid $15 million to advise on a transaction with Highbridge. That sort of thing I was referring to.
I don't see that distinction, Mr. Staley, and instead it looks like you are giving information to the Bowdoin trustees, the Bowdoin College trustees, that is not entirely accurate, because at the time, all of the emails and documents that we have were not public. And if you were comfortable lying before, how do we know you're not lying to us now?
I'm not lying to you.
That's all we have. That concludes our hour. Thank you, you son of a bitch.
he's not lying to them. He says he's lying. Of course, he's lying.
Of course he is.
And that almost concludes our hour. But that was an interesting thing. But there's a couple of other things that are worth mentioning here, because we haven't meant this was a really financial transaction focused look at what Jess Staley said in his interview. There is some stuff about Snow White, which is a sort of the character that he's referring. I mean, it's unfortunate because it's a funny name, but it's about one of the women that he had allegedly abused, I guess is the right term to use, who worked for Jeffrey Epstein. And I've written a lot about this, and there's been speculation about who Snow White is or was. But there's also a lot of, and I'm not sure they got to it in this testimony because I haven't read all of it, about the way he had sex and the sort of the violent way he had sex with some of these women in Epstein's universe. There, it's quite disturbing when you read it in graphic detail.
So let me just say that this is literally desecration of Disney characters. These emails that talk about this, can I read? I only have a few lines.
Yeah.
So Staley says to Epstein, "That was fun. Say hi to Snow White." And Epstein says, "What character would you like next?" And Staley says, "Beauty and the Beast." And Epstein says, "Well, one side is available," meaning, of course, Beauty. And then following that email, Staley says, okay, can I almost never use the F word, but I need to because that's what it says.
Go for it.
Staley says to Epstein, "Snow White was fucked twice as soon as she put on her costume." What, I mean, I don't
they actually have them in
but
costume? Maybe they have them in costume.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That was an actual, and again, I don't kink shame, but in this context, it's disgusting. Even if she would, I mean, even if she was of age, that's more than
she want to dress up in bed and do whatever scenarios they want to do. That's good for them and keeping their sex lives interesting. But what is clearly happening here is that Jess Staley was being compromised by Jeffrey Epstein. This is the way the network worked. Every time there was a powerful person that came into the network, they were encouraged to do something they wouldn't want the world to know necessarily. They wouldn't want their wives to know. They wouldn't want their family to know. And they would do things that would be kind of embarrassing, ultimately, if it was revealed to the public. And that way, Jeffrey Epstein knew that he had compromise over somebody. He had something that he could hold over them. So as they did all these other favors for him and transactions for him and all this other maneuvering they did in the world of politics and business, he knew that he had something over them. Yeah. That's the compromise. And that's how Russian mob works. He brought those tactics with him to the United States. And it's exactly the same kind of approach where they all knew they couldn't go say anything against Jeffrey Epstein, and they still are terrified of saying anything against Jeffrey Epstein because of this compromising material that they know is out there. Because a lot of it was shot on video. A lot of it still exists. A lot of it still continues to be usable to this day, which is why you have so few people coming out and reporting what happened with Jeffrey Epstein and them and what their involvement was, even though they might feel like, hey, maybe I should tell the truth. Telling the truth is very expensive because you not only reveal stuff about yourself, you reveal stuff about the entire network, and that entire network is a very powerful network.
Yep. And then the next thing you know, you're either pushed out a window or taken your own life because, that's what I wanted to say was, and I know you know about this, is that, last week that FBI dropped from the FOIA request, which I grabbed before anyone could, disappear it. One of the things in there, and it's a massive, I mean, it's, so I sent out, I think, like 2 bits of it to my, notes from the front. The first one being the actual how to redact the documents instructions. It's really interesting. Right. But one of the things was, or actually several things are basically inventories of what the FBI has from their collecting stuff from Epstein's. Did you know it was like 8 floors, his apartment in New York? It was ridiculously huge. Yeah. Huge. But it lists, among other things, like hundreds of thousands of video and audio and I want to know where the hell those are.
Well, that's the bulk of the evidence that we're never going to see.
Yeah.
And no matter how much we want to be able to see them, some of it has disappeared. But some of it is still in the files of the FBI that they're just not sharing with us. But there are terabytes and terabytes of information.
I am sure that to the extent there was compromise on foreign dignitaries, that now we're holding that for the same use, right?
We could be holding it for the same use. You're absolutely right that could be. I mean, considering who's in government right now, it's the same network. It's Donald Trump's network, and he's famous for his blackmailing. That's what he does, or at least what he did when he was a casino owner. That was one of the things that he used to pull off all the time.
Well, that's why he's so used to saying, now he just says, sure is a nice little state you got. It would be a shame if something happened to it.
Right. Or whatever he says about Canada or any other things, Lake America.
Oh my God, that's really going to go over about as much as the Gulf.
It's so stupid. It's going to be a funny skit on Saturday Night Live, which is going to be very funny on Saturday. So everyone should watch if it's still on the air. Ann P. Mitchell, thank you so much for being here today and playing the role of yourself, a lawyer and advocate. And everyone should be following you at Ann P. Mitchell at Notes from the Front. I think you're on the subscribe button just above here because I can see your name.
I am.
So everyone, please subscribe to Ann. Please give her a paid subscription. She does a lot of work and provides you source material, including transcriptions you can't get from anywhere else, only on her site, and it's worth your time. And by the
way, wait, right before you go, I'm sorry to talk over you, but again, anyone who's here from my followers, please hit that upper left and subscribe to Zev if you aren't already, because I mean, I do the legal stuff, but Zev does so much more. The political stuff and the financial stuff, like, oh my God, the things he has in his head, he is amazing, and he never ever sleeps. He's just 24/7. He's reporting for you. So please follow him.
Yeah, I would encourage people as well to follow us both, because we'll both have the Staley transcripts below this. So you'll both be able to share this. And some of this will be available to free viewers, but most of it will be available just to paid subscribers. Right. But I should also say, and I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh, you should read The Greatest Heist Book 2. Yes. Greatest Heist Book 2 is all about this period of time. And it's still considered controversial by some people, but it's my take on, having read a lot of this evidence, having compiled a lot of this evidence, into how the 2008 crash happened and how Jeffrey Epstein triggered that crash through one sell-off of funds that landed up being a year-long event that culminated in the 2008 crash. It's detailed in the book. It all happens at the same time as he's being charged with the child trafficking that we're talking about. And Jess Staley's in that book, and there's a lot of inside commentary from Jess Staley and other bank executives that are compiled inside that book, which is not a real book. It's a Substack book, but it's 10 chapters, which tells you how they got away with one of the greatest heists in history, because $80 trillion was ultimately taken from the U.S. economy in the last 50 years by this network. And a large chunk of that came in the fallout of 2008, when they were all walked away whole or even made money, while everybody else was broken, lost their homes, and lost their futures, because that's just how this network operates.
So I have two questions for you before we go. The first one is, you've read a fair amount of the Staley transcript now. Are there questions that you think they should have asked that they didn't?
Yes, and they didn't ask about liquid funding. And liquid funding is one of those things that is a mystery to everybody, because it was a vehicle, an offshore vehicle that was managed by Jeffrey Epstein, was held as part of Bear Stearns. So it was a part of the Bear Stearns empire. And it was full of $6.7 billion of funds held in offshore accounts, secured by JP Morgan, secured by Bank of Mellon. And for some reason, when Bear Stearns collapsed and was sold to JP Morgan, as they were trying to rescue that bank and rescue the economy, before all that happened, liquid funding was paid off completely, in whole, made completely whole. Every single person who owned that $6.7 billion got all their money back.
Wow.
Nobody else got their money back in that crisis, but Jeffrey Epstein's offshore holding, liquid funding, did. And I bet you Jess Staley knows a thing or two about all of that, and he's not sharing.
I wonder if I mean, you've probably already looked, but because Tess has, in addition to all of the EFTA documents, it has, the offshore accounts and all that. I wonder if there's a way to piece that together through Tess.
We've done a lot of it through your team at Tess and through and it all bears out what I say in Greatest Heights book 2. I think it's going to take a little while for people to really accept that as being what happened, because people just can't believe it. People refuse to believe that a single person, especially one as such a menace while in jail, could actually collapse the market. But it just follows once you read the book, and maybe it needs an extra chapter at the end where I can really wrap it up for everybody. But this was like everything Donald Trump has done, a heist, and you can see it in the way he rules every single day. It's all about the scheme and how much money he can make for himself. 2008 was just one of those schemes, and they all made a lot of money while everyone else suffered.
And that brings me actually perfectly to my next question. But first, I'm going to implore you to include a link to The Greatest Heist when you post this, so that people can find it easily. But do you think it's possible? And I just bow to your financial, awareness, because I have very little. But I just saw today that public filings have shown that Trump has invested a massive amount of money in oil and gas stocks while the Iran war is going on. Do you think it's possible that Trump could be doing the same thing now?
Yeah, he did. Of course he did it. Of course he made a lot of money inside trading of the oil and gas stocks, but he also made a lot of money, we found out today, of Boeing. He had an inside trade on Boeing they were getting $880 million from the Pentagon. That's on narrative.org. He is minting his way through this entire presidency, stealing money from the American taxpayer, making money for his network and his family as they continue to take in billions and billions of dollars from the American taxpayer, while, making our army and our munition supply depleted, making us weaker around the world, and allowing our foreign adversaries to take advantage of us, all at the same time as they're enriching themselves and their network. And so far, they're getting away with it. We'll see if that lasts.
Yeah. Agent 99 is saying Congress needs to stop them. But hey, guess what? Congress isn't even in session right now. So,
but
we just
November
have to get through
is November.
November. Yep. And here's the
correctly.
Good thing. The good thing is that he is getting more and more out of control, and that people are seeing it. And so he is actually helping to sway the November midterms to blue, which is why he is so terrified. So
yeah, it's exactly right. And why I wrote The Greatest Heist when I did, and I knew people would find it really controversial, is just to make sure that everyone sort of started seeing the pattern of this network, that this network colludes with itself, colludes with foreign mob organizations, and colludes with foreign intelligence agencies to extract money from the American economy that ultimately really hurts the taxpayer. It really hurts us in the ability to provide basic services. And it's why the cost of your living has gone up. It's why we have $40 trillion in debt right now. It's just because these guys are stealing money left, right, and center while the rest of us suffer. And that is our show for tonight. Ann P. Mitchell, Esquire, please subscribe, please follow, please give her a paid subscription. And I'm Zev Shalev, and thanks very much for doing this. Appreciate your time today. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.